Financial Task Force meeting to order. Thank you all for joining us on a sunny Wednesday. Let's start with some good news. The update. Carrie, would you mind touching base about credit cards?
Yes. So I ordered 2 credit cards to start, one for myself and one for Mike. They came in yesterday. So all of the Google and Adobe are now on a Citi credit card, which feels good. And Mike has a credit card to get started on all of his summer things. I'm going to meet again. It didn't end up taking as many sessions with like the training as I was kind of led to believe. It was a little bit easier than it was kind of assumed to be. And my point of contact is out on vacation. I have a point of contact while he's gone if I need anything, but I think we're fine. And then we're going to basically meet again mid-April just to talk about what it actually looks like once transactions appear on the account. And then we'll have a bill due. There's probably yep. We'll have a bill due April 25th. And then I made myself and Stacy the account admins, which I actually still need to talk to her about. So she's probably wondering what the email she got is because she was out sick, I think, the day I invited her. So I'll probably do that today.
Thank you, Carrie.
So Carrie, I have a question, and this may not be something you can answer right at this moment, but are we working on the ACH pull for that payment? And will that be like on the due date or a couple of days before the due date? How are we going to set that up?
Yeah, I that's part of the reason I want Stacy as one of the admins, because I think it's best if she sets that up. But I think it's due on the 25th. I'm not opposed to the idea of paying it a couple of days early, just in case, no late fees ever again is the goal. So that seems like the safest option.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other thoughts around credit cards? Good time. I gotta say, at least for Mike and his business. Alrighty. The gravel pit MMA was added to the chart of accounts, so it's now reflected in our records, which is great. Thank you, Chip, for bringing that up, and also Jim in his office. I'm not sure if Stacy or Robin who officially added it, but there it is now reflected. So when there, and one thing that Rick brought up during the council meeting is the Vermont Bond Bank. That stuff went all well forward. It's today's the day.
As far as I know, it's just going to happen without us today because I haven't seen anything from the attorneys. So I'll double check it late this morning and make sure we're all set. But I think it should just happen. And then the plan is, as I understand it, that there be a transfer made, I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, into the general checking account is what I've been led to believe. And within 24 hours, we will turn around and transfer the full amount to pay off the bond anticipation note with Pasumsic. So if all goes well, the whole thing will be resolved by the end of the week and we'll be free and clear of the Pasumsic debt.
We will just reorganize that debt with somebody else.
Yeah.
Yes, but I'll just take the win at 1% lower interest rate. So
Yes.
Makes a big difference.
yes.
All right, great. Any other updates that I'm not thinking of? I think that's it. Okay, let's move on to fun stuff, which is reviewing the bids that 2 audit groups got back to us on. So we have, are we saying Batch Elder? Is that,
I think.
sounds right? Batch Elder, I'm just gonna go with it. And KBS. I don't know if folks wanted to talk about pros, cons of each, or if people feel strongly and they just want to name their preference and why. I don't really have a structure to this part of the conversation. I just want to hear from you guys. I have thoughts, but I would like, yeah, I don't know how Susie or Lori you guys have any thoughts on the two proposals that we received.
I have a question. What are we currently paying our former, I guess, soon to be former auditors? What's their rate?
Was it 60?
So last year I pressed them because their initial bid to us had no estimate on the number of hours. It gave us an hourly rate, but no estimate on the number of hours. You may remember we kind of talked about that together about, I think it must have been about this time, maybe April, early May of last year. So we pressed them on it and they came back with an estimate for a single, at that point, I think we still weren't even sure if it was going to be single audit on top of the regular audit, and eventually discovered we did not have to do the single audit. We didn't meet the threshold for being required to do that. So I was hopeful when we started the process that their estimate of coming in somewhere in the mid 40s would be acceptable, would work itself out. But in fact, the final bill came to mid 60s, I believe it was $66,000. So, and their bid came in considerably under their own amount they spent last year, which raises my eyebrows. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that, because I don't think we taxed them in an extraordinary way on this last audit. We pressed them to do it quickly, and they said they could manage that. That was part of our negotiation up front because we wanted it done by mid-fall, and they got it done, to their credit. But I have serious questions about how they expect to try and drop the cost if last year's audit was any example.
Well, and wasn't the year before, I mean, I recognize also the year before was the drawn out, back and forth stuff, but how much was the audit the prior year? It wasn't 65,000, was it?
I don't remember for sure, Lori, off the top of my head. Maybe Carrie can find it.
I'm finding it.
Carrie will find that number for us.
Okay. I mean, I don't remember looking at those numbers, for the last couple of years on the budget worksheets. Just, it doesn't seem that 65, almost 70,000 was sort of a surprise. Yeah,
it was
my opinion.
I mean, especially, they told us that they expected to be able to come in lower if we did all the work on our end to make it as smooth as possible, which between Chip and Stacy and Jim and the department heads, I think we did the best we possibly could have done on that.
I think that's why that amount was kind of surprising when it came in.
Yeah. Chip, you worked more closely with them than I did. I don't know if you want to add anything to any of that.
So I know KBS for years has done the administration of your fixed assets that they have tracked in spreadsheets they developed. And they thought that last year that the city would update those spreadsheets themselves. That did not happen. And so KBS had to put staff into pulling out of the financial reports all the fixed assets and changes and documenting those. I now have the end result spreadsheets to convert into NEMRC fixed assets, but we'll face that same condition if the fixed assets for FY26 are not actually updated.
That's really helpful, Chip, because I had kind of forgotten that nuance.
Yeah, and that's part of GASB and GAAP. Full accrual is managing fixed assets. It really has no bearing on how the city operates, but in order to keep CPAs busy, they add things at the board level that gives CPAs new stuff to do.
In terms of the amounts spent in previous years, from what I can tell, they went $7,000 over in FY25, $4,000 over in 24, $3,000 over in 23, $2,000 over 22. They've always gone I mean, it's kind of like escalating, but obviously last year seems like an outlier with
And
going.
what was the total 2 years ago?
Values are different too.
They probably, okay, I mean, so like 25 was 48.
Yeah, so it was considerably less than their bill last year.
Right.
I think it'd be worth, I do think it would be worth trying to do a follow-up phone call, a couple of folks from this committee with both KBS and the other company. And one of the questions I would ask KBS is, what happened in the books last year that made you think that, or that justified this, tremendous increase? And how is it that you expect to be able to lower that this coming year?
Well, they don't mention anything about decreasing, I mean, at all in this. So I guess wasn't knowledgeable on that. I guess here are the couple things that as I went through these is, Batchelder obviously is significantly less expensive, and you can kind of attribute that to the hourly rate. They're not as big. They're within like 10% of the number of hours and estimates amount of work. So they're pretty comparable of everything. The, things that came up in my mind were, as a government entity, we're kind of compelled to use the lowest cost provider. Is with Batchelder. What if they encounter more issues? What's the contingency for billing? Is that just at their flat rate? Do we get a discount if they miss their quote? What are those kind of nuances? KBS didn't see any references provided. My personal, honestly, I kind of want to support the little guy, Batchelder, in that sense, and a small business type of approach, since their hourly cost is lower and they probably don't have the same type of overhead. My other concern with Batchelder, on the flip side, my concern with Batchelder is, do they have the manpower, and how, with the number of hours, translate that into how long this is going to take? So great is 124 hours, I think it was, that they put in there. Okay, that's 3 solid weeks. They're not going to just focus on us for 3 solid weeks. Is it a 6-week process? Is it an 8-week process? Chip, are there any requirements, like, does this have to be done by a certain date? So we can kind of understand when, or I don't know if there's I want to make sure we understand our timelines. That's what I'm getting at. I don't have anything to base that on.
So the state of Vermont, you either need to submit to the Office of Finance and Administration all of the grants that you received funds from or expended funds from within 45 days of the fiscal year end, unless you require a single audit. And if you require a single audit, then the single audit should be filed within 6 months of the fiscal year end.
Okay.
And I'm guessing the city has not met the 6 months in years. I know that we at NIMRIC have worked with both of these entities. And so when you look at Batchelder, price alone is what, 2/3 or less of what KBS said. They both have written in there that they do provide at the hourly rates shown additional bookkeeping and data preparation and form preparation over and above the audit.
Yeah.
And that they will do that with and for you. And I think, unfortunately, that is where, if we're not prepared and they do the work, that's over and above the audit fee itself.
I
Yeah.
certainly think that you should check out some of the cities that both of these companies have worked for and get their opinions of how they've worked for the other cities or any problems. And also look at sample audits, particularly of the new company that we're not familiar with, to see what that audit looked like for whatever Brattleboro, for instance, that they worked for, as compared to what our audit looks like.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because you're right. I can go on Brattleboro's website or their references, and it should be posted, so we can get a good comparison there. Yeah, coming into this meeting, my thoughts on next steps were I wanted to reach out to the references of Batchelder, and see how that process went, their delivery timelines, how their budget went, because I feel like I'm more comfortable going with a new group with a lower bid, expecting it to go up a little bit versus expecting KBS to come down on their price and be able to trim. And I don't know. That's
also the renewal rate was, and Pam, I'm sorry, I saw you put your hand up. Did you take it down?
Yeah, it was an accident that it went up.
Okay. The long term, KBS had an 8% increase year over year, whereas Batchelder had a 3%. So, because we're not just thinking about 1 year out, we're thinking three, and that turns, 5%, big difference, and it compounds. So what are we doing to watch the pennies going forward? Even if Batchelder goes, something goes crazy and they have an, exceptional issue and prices go up significantly, it's going to take a lot to overcome that delta.
Yes.
so
So some follow-up.
Yeah, so I'll take the reference check for Batchelder because I'm preferential. That's my preference. So, but nonetheless, I'll still do QAQC and bring that to the council before our next meeting. Would somebody do the same with KBS just to make sure we're thorough and getting all the data points?
Just requesting references from them?
Oh, you're right.
Because they only gave us a peer reference from.
Yeah.
Yeah, look on page 6, relevant firm experience.
Oh, okay. Okay. They just worded it in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, if they didn't meet the expectations with RFPs, but no, they didn't. Okay, presumption in a different way. Great.
Can I just say this from a, I don't know if it's a realistic way to look at this or ignorant way to look at this, but you know what? I hate to say it. We've used KBS for what, 20 years? And, in the last 5 or so, we've not particularly been happy with, well, at least in the last year, what we've found is that we just don't really know that I think they're doing their job, but sometimes you've got to go for a complete change to maybe find out whether, what we were looking at. Are we trusting them with too much? Are we going back to them because we know them?
Yes.
We've had so many questions in the last year that, I'm not saying they can't do their job. I'm just saying maybe this is just time for a change.
Yeah. It did seem a little bit like a go away quote when it's a third hire. I've provided those.
I don't know, Al.
Yeah, but they didn't know what the other, if anybody else would respond. So it's not like they knew what the other competitors were going to bid.
I would just say it's probably what they went on from last year, what they did for us last fall. And maybe they looked back a few years. I'm still baffled by the difference, the large difference in prior year and last year.
Definitely.
That's a lot.
If it's like the financial task force, if y'all are like, we're not interested, and having continued conversation. That's very
Yeah, that's kind of
valid.
what I'm coming to.
And I'm totally all right with that. I just wanted to
Just
put it
check
out there. 'Cause,
references.
Yeah, I
On the other
wanna,
company.
I'm putting my eggs in that basket and I want to have that conversation. But if others want to have another egg in the basket, I get it. But I also being like a cuckoo and kicking that egg out. I don't know.
I mean, I could fairly easily find those email addresses and send out a VCC email and say, like, can you tell me a little bit about your experience? Like, if you want to be, I'm happy to do that. That's
Okay.
simple enough.
Yeah, could you
Yeah.
take like 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's what I'm like.
Thank you.
If we
Okay.
want to keep the playing field a little
Yeah.
more level for a little longer.
Well, and we should be able to find their own audits. I mean, their completed audits on their websites, right?
Yeah.
So if any of us just wanted to go look at, Town of Middlebury annual audit for last year and see, how it compares.
I think Kari or whoever on the reference check, I think it's really be specific on what you're looking for. What was your experience like in working with them? What have your concern, what were the positives? Ask very specifically what were the negatives and, things of that nature, because, if you don't ask the specific question, they're not going to give you the specific answer.
You're going to get a canned response saying, this is
Yeah.
great.
So be like,
It would be great if you had a uniform list of questions so that whoever spoke to what, if there are two people doing this, that they would ask the same set of questions to each of the companies, and then you could compare the answers.
Yes, agree.
All right. That's great. Thank you guys for the, that's
So
for
can
sure.
I add one more thing, Carter?
Mhm.
I wonder, because we have an extra week this time, we don't have to rush it quite as much as we might otherwise.
Yeah.
I wonder if we might want to set a time for this group to actually do an interview with the newer company, the new company, and just have a face-to-face for 20 minutes or a half hour to get a sense of them before we make a final recommendation to council.
that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I like that.
Why don't you run for office, Rick?
You should be mayor.
Yeah, who knew? So,
I guess the other question though is we need to ask them, we are now almost I hate to say it, we're almost at the end of April. At what point do they cut off adding, is Bonnie Batchelor going to say, I need your decision by such and such a date? I don't remember seeing that in here. I'm guessing they have to have a timeline for adding and taking off companies. I don't know.
yeah, it's a good question, Lori. It's my expectation that this group will put a recommendation before council for the April 6th meeting, and council will make a decision. Because
Okay.
you're right, if we get much later than this, we're already behind, and we can't afford to be behind on this.
Well, I mean, having been in a family that owned a CPA firm for decades, they're not going to touch anything until May 1st at this point. They're in tax season.
Right.
I'm just saying we don't want to delay our request to them,
But they're
Fear
not
that they're
going to
gonna
get
say,
any work
"Nope,
started
can't
on
do
it
it."
until May 1st at the earliest.
Yeah.
Because they'll be working through taxes through April, middle of April, extensions through the end of April, and usually vacation for the CPA firms hits heavy and hard right after April. CPAs don't go on spring break.
Carrie, would you mind kind of figuring out a time that we could all meet? Or look, actually back up. Does this maybe Wednesdays next week, or when does this group have availability? And then I'll kindly try to task Carrie with coordinating a meeting for us with them. So on the calendars.
Wednesday next week is fine.
Mhm.
Yep, I have it. Hold on. Okay. Oh, I'm looking at my council email, like, wow, my next week is, it's not my work calendar. Dang it. Okay.
We have to do better ones more. So we try and meet with them a week from today.
Which is
Yeah.
the
At 8 a.m.
20th.
That's a great idea.
I'm free all morning, so if they don't like 8 a.m., that's okay. I'm actually free most mornings next week. Except for Thursday. So yeah. Great. And then, yeah, in the meantime, I will send out emails, same questions, specific ones to the references they had. And do some poking on those websites too to get the audit comparisons. But yeah, I think this is a great step forward. Yeah, and then they understand what they're looking into. All right. Okay. Any other thoughts on the audit group / next steps? I'm feeling really good, so I'm feeling good to move on. But
So there's one, I think, significant difference that's going to be between the two firms. Bonnie Batchelder may never appear at City Hall.
yeah, that's
She does a ton of her stuff all remotely. So the collection of information, the copying of information is all done electronically or by mail. And the results are submitted electronically or by mail. I don't believe they actually physically go on sites when they do audits.
That's a good question to add to the reference request.
Mhm.
What was the interaction like? How, personal were they? Because that's a good point of guidance. And don't forget, if that's something we feel they did include their hourly rate, we pay for travel. I mean, varies what, 90 minutes down the road? Everything's 90 minutes in Vermont. 90 minutes down the road, we pay for half a day. If we need it here or there, that might be something, because that was one of my concerns is, the overruns, but because they're significantly less.
Right. When the
Yes.
principals are $400 an hour,
Yeah.
ABS, and $250 at Batchelder.
Which,
Yeah. Every hour is a bigger split.
yeah.
I'm not sure with respect to what our current auditors do for us, but I think there's always been a question of whether or not our finance division is knowledgeable enough to switch everything into accrual and then switch everything back, because basically they work in a cash flow mode. And I think that maybe our auditors do that for us currently. And maybe the next auditing firm might not want to get involved in the minutia of that. So I may be wrong about the premise, but Chip would know more about that than I.
Yeah, I think KBS does the reporting, creates financial statements from whatever you present to them. And I think Batchelder is going to require you to create the financial statements and present them to her in a finished state. That is a significant difference in the expected reporting.
So that sounds like a worthwhile question to ask as well. The other thing I would add is that this year may be challenging, but by next year, doing this off-site should not be a challenge for us because we will have fully converted to AP Essentials by then. So everything will be online for the year and available electronically, as opposed to what we've always had to do with KBS, which is they spend a week here going through all of our files and pulling paper copies of everything. So the good news is we've now made that transition, and it will be in effect for only part of the year this year, so that it will still be challenging this year.
Yes.
And make by then also have a city manager.
Say again?
And a city manager too. And
Yes, we'll have a
this is the
city manager
person
who
to
manage
help
it. Right.
point and assist in that process.
Yeah, I suspect this will be the first major task for a city manager coming in. I hope we'll have somebody in place. So
Okay, great. Moving on to.
I'm sorry. So
No.
we're gonna, so Carter, you and Carrie will work together to, and Rick maybe will put a list of questions together from this conversation And so that like was suggested that we're asking the same questions of both firms or both reference checks
Yes.
and move forward with that in the next few days.
Yeah.
Carrie, are you comfortable with helping putting together the documentation? Because I assume you're going to be the champion for that.
For the actual audit,
Yeah.
I mean, with proper direction, because it'll be my first year. So looking forward to figuring it out. But at this very moment, I don't know, yeah.
That's the way.
Just put it on your calendar at the end of the process. A recap and learnings, so that next year you're ready. Hopefully, to Rick's point, some of it will not be an issue, but yeah. Don't want to lose that institutional knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. Budget review, moving on to that, number 4, am I right? Yes. Okay, so this agenda item came from when, at the top of this month, the council was reviewing budget to actuals, and there was a gap starting to emerge in a couple of the police department's expenses that were concerning. And because the police department is in general a large expense of the city's services, that percentage was concerning because we want to make sure we come in the black this year. So I just kind of named like, hey, I'm going to have the financial task force look at this. But I also had a conversation with Travis yesterday with Rick when we walked through it. So I just kind of want to bring everybody up to speed on what we talked about with this budget. And then kind of explain how it was really great process that we're going to continue with the other department heads now that we're at about 3/4 of the way through the year. And I also just want to name, I had some incorrect notions about the revenue that the dispatch brought in and what the expenses were there. And I also had done some math wrong. I was thinking that we were going to be close to $500,000 over, which was it was an exaggerate. It was incorrect. So my initial journey, I have done a lot of learning, and so I'm just going to bring everybody up. So if you have those incorrect notions like I do, yeah. So I'm looking at the budget report, and I'm wondering, Carrie, could you share the screen so that we're all kind of looking at it? Great, thank you. I mean, everybody might have it, but just so that we're on this, literally the same page. Okay. So first, okay, so I'll jump to where we were concerned. Is that probably where?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the overtime line. So we're going. Yeah, the overtime line being so much. With a quarter of the way through the year, and we're quarter over. That's not the best place to be in, but it turns out that Stone Garden was going to reimburse, so a grant program, some of those expenses got put into this. And so now, Chip, if you want to talk about like why, but there's other lines, if you look down below, there's Stone Garden maintenance supply. There's also Stone Garden equipment. So some things were being spliced from that program and tracked appropriately, but for readability and to understand, for perfecting this chart of accounts, it would, the police chief requested that there be a separate line for detail for Stone Garden, because that was getting put into here because it is overtime technically.
But it's reimbursed over time by
it's
Stone Garden.
yeah. So to
Yeah,
kind
so
of jump.
If I could just say specifically, out of that $111,716, roughly $58,000 is Stone Garden related, $48,000 of which has been reimbursed, and we're still awaiting about 10 grand on that reimbursement. So if you took the 58,000 out of the 111, it drops that line down to about 50, 55, $60,000, and puts us right about where you would expect to be on our overtime line for the year. And Chip, I think I saw an email go by where you've already responded to Travis's request, and you're working on making that change so that it's, you don't have to do the math in your head to figure that out.
Right.
Alrighty. Excellent.
And also just Travis pointed out that for next year's budget, you know, this is the one that he has to really play with because he never knows this, the stuff that he's trying to cover for what happens when somebody has a child, which apparently is going to happen again May 1st or something like that, or mid-May. And then he has to cover for, you know, family leave. He has to hire somebody to cover those shifts. So, you know, it's kind of a guessing game for him, but next year's budget includes $120,000 in that line item to make sure that we're being realistic about what the real overtime cost is.
Some of the other things in this expense category that we're looking at, I think Chip put it as like the hard lesson to learn from misbudgeting, but some of these things were put together without the best frame of reference and knowledge. And those are like the HRA insurance, the other benefits that are going high, like the health insurance. And that has been corrected. Like that was something that we named in our budget workshop and explained why there was that jump. But this is unfortunately the reality of the incorrect numbers that we're working through right now.
Do you know if Stone Garden covers any of those?
I
Because you know how with like MERP, like we can
Yeah.
bill it, like that would be nice and that would help.
That's a good
offset
question. I don't
some.
know the
Yeah.
answer. And Carrie, if you scroll up just a little bit to the revenue side,
Yeah.
there's one line in the revenue side that at the very bottom there, it says other income. And for some reason, a year ago, we budgeted $30,000 in that category and none of us know why. So there's not $30,000 that we're expecting in that line. 2 years ago, we got $20,000 from the state in that other income line. There was nothing in last year's financials and it was zeroed out there. So I'm expecting that to go down by $30,000. So when I ran the numbers with Travis and Carter yesterday, it looks to me like we're sitting somewhere around $185,000 to $190,000 deficit overall for the PD budget. And almost all of that is going to be is attributable to three things. This 30,000 in revenue that we're not going to make, the mistakes that we made in budgeting for the cost of healthcare. Maybe it's just those two things.
And then I'm trying to, which line is it? The resource officer line.
Oh, the school.
That again,
That
this
was-
budget
yes.
is going to be a little bit less, more like $67,000. But
167, I think it was, right?
No.
Or was it 67?
Yeah.
67 instead of 80.
so we're losing about 13,000 there. But then Carrie found that our projections for the dispatch income actually be probably a little bit over by 10,000. But yes, bottom line is
185 to 190.
And
And there's no real way to fix that. So the real question at that point becomes, what's the rest of the budget look like? So we're having meetings this morning, Carter and Carrie and I, with each of the department heads to look at where they're going to come in. And I suspect that we will come very close to finding all or most of what we need in, you know, the adjustments that are going to be made. But we won't have a good sense of that until we go through these other meetings and get sure about it.
I hate to even be the one that says this, but for how long? I mean, it's I'm back to like a year ago where my whole brain is just going, how long have we been doing this so wrong?
Yeah.
And why?
The benefits side, at least 4 years. It seemed to start to go out of whack about 4 years ago, and it got worse over time. And I think that can mostly be attributed to the problem that Chip identified for us, which is that our budgeting was tied to a spreadsheet that was not tied to reality, right? It was not tied to NEMRIC and our actual spending from the previous years. And then it was bad anyway. And then it got way worse last year because we also did it without the institutional knowledge that Becky had, because she had been out by the time we did this budgeting work last year for 9 months. So there was no one to turn to for the help with that.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't want to keep reliving history, but this is one of those moments where, again, you have to explain to people, at least in some orderly way, that we have now corrected these problems and we're going to move forward from them. You know, we're not going to sit in that old place. We're going to fix it. It's going to take a while, and this is the way it looks, but you know.
And we are fixing it. And the city staff is on it. Like just on Monday, we were talking about what a change Carrie's brought to the city and her dogged pursuit of actual truth in these numbers.
Yeah.
Makes us like, okay, what we are in control of right now is true, is accurate, is verified. But unfortunately, yeah, we're still operating within a budget when we didn't have those numbers verified, that those numbers were based on that spreadsheet. So yeah, it's that, like, we are actively changing and in control, but unfortunately we're still having these numbers to work from.
And by next week, we should be able to give you an overall assessment of, you know, are we going down by 100K? Are we going to be up by 50K? I think it's going to be somewhere in that range, honestly. And I keep saying to everybody, you know, Carter's heard me say it now at 2 different meetings with department heads that she's attended, you know, one way or another, we've got to figure out how we're going to finish this year in the black, because it's a credibility issue with folks. You know, we went to them and asked for an awful lot in August and a lot with this last budget. And we've got to find a way to show them that we are spending responsibly.
I hope that, you know, I know we're not at this conversation yet, but, you know, a town meeting in May, that we will be able to stand up and say, you know, this is where we're headed, folks. And we're going to come out okay.
We'll definitely know. I suspect we'll know that number a week from now, and it'll get increasingly more precise as we go. But you know, I've been through, in the last 24 hours, I've been through the entire budget to actual, and I've got probably 35 or 40 lines where I have questions that range anywhere from a $2,000 difference to a $50,000 difference.
With respect to Stone Garden, I'd really like to know whether or not all of the Stone Garden pay that the feds give us is overtime, because it all should be overtime, since I think our police officers work for us for the basic 40 hours. And definitely, if we're not getting our fair share from them of Social Security, health insurance, vision, all of that stuff, we should renegotiate our terms, it seems to me, with Stone Garden, so that they pay their fair share, because in the future, they may want even more of our police officers' time because of all the issues with respect to borders. And certainly they should be paying their fair share for the hard work our police officers do for them.
Yeah, point taken. That, yeah, it might evolve, and to be ready, I think a really good first step is to find that contract and see if that's applicable, because at least with the state it is. And I don't want to even venture to guess what the federal guidelines are around reimbursement for time, but I would hope it's covered.
Travis will know.
Yeah.
He'll know for sure. I just don't know the answer.
Yeah, answers in the contract.
Yeah, Pam, and I think that's a really good point. And I just want to point out also that Travis budgeted less Stone Garden activity for next year, because his sense is that at the moment it's actually tracking downward, not upward. So he was trying to budget conservatively and was counting less on Stone Garden for the coming year.
Okay, looking at the clock, I want to move on to other topics, but if there's any remaining thoughts or questions.
Well, I know I said this Monday night at City Council, but thank you, Carrie, for your dogged pursuit of all of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing that came up in that same budget to actual walkthrough with Chip on March 9th, I don't know why I'm pulling out the number. was the cemetery funds. One, it's gonna take until the end of the year for all those zero accounts to go away, and I will patiently wait and celebrate when those are gone. That just probably colors a little too much, but the cemetery funds is one of those that we had discussed in this group also a while ago, that we don't necessarily have control over these funds, but yet the interest does actually pay for the mowing, really close equate, and they almost zero out. So for a while we would look at this budget to actual though, and there's like a deficit of like 23K, and we're like, but it actually that is very historic. And so if you click the link, you can go back to how this dates back to 2001 when I was in first grade. Some account was, or some charge was put there and roughly remained. And Chip, I don't know if you want to kind of, I want to pass the mic to you to explain again, bigger picture, why we are trying to reflect and zero out this account and how that would behoove the city. Because yeah, you have the right language terms, and I don't want to butcher it.
So in the due to from report right now, there's a reflection of $23,000+ that the East Cemetery Fund owes the general fund. And it started at $22,000 back in 2001 or before, because we just don't have history before 2001. So that may have been carried for 10 years before that. We just don't know. The options are, if the city council chooses to forgive that obligation, in accounting, what that means is we would move as an expense in the general fund to a revenue in the cemetery fund, the value in the due to from, simply to remove that obligation owed back. It is not to try to move cash. It is only to move value.
Yeah.
If we want the cemetery to physically take money out of their cash accounts, of which they have 2 that are actual liquid cash, and turn it over to the general fund to relieve or reduce the $23,000, then the cemetery investment account would have to raise enough in earnings to pay for the mowing in the future.
I'll turn the sound off.
And so we're kind of in a dilemma. If we take all their money, we may be paying for mowing. And if we just turn it over to them, that value to relieve the $23,000, then they get to keep, which is just over $24,000 in cash, continue earning money and paying for mowing themselves. And so the 2 are totally different accounting requirements. If it's cash, it's cash. And I think ultimately then the general fund's going to pay for mowing anyway. And if it's simply an adjustment that says, look, the general fund's going to eat this $23,000 so that the East Cemetery no longer shows that obligation back. And that obligation has existed, probably if you go back through the audits, it's been there forever. So either way, or a combination of the 2, might at least resolve a due to from that simply has been continuously reported and no action taken on.
Is the East Cemetery, dumb question, where is the East Cemetery? I'm assuming it's the one, I don't know. Where's the cemetery that we're paying for?
Beside the Baptist church.
Okay, that is the one?
Is it by the brown cow?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would assume the East Cemetery at one time was basically run by a cemetery association. And then at some point, the cemetery association so-called gifted
Yeah.
the East Cemetery to the city. With the city had the obligations to use the resources that group had to continue to maintain the cemetery. And at some point, 20 grand plus was spent on something for that cemetery. And there was no plan to get it back.
And it's full, right? That's maybe a silly
Yes,
question, but
there's
there's
not
no
more
additional,
income
yeah,
expected to come
okay,
in
that's
for
what
it.
I thought.
So what's the 24,000 for? I mean, what, is it for if there is a burial?
No,
So
and
there is no burial.
the 24,000 is an obligation, the
Oh.
22,000 is an obligation that we've carried on the books that they owe us for longer than anybody can remember.
Gotcha. Okay. So
all
there
we-
really is no money except what's in those little cash.
Well, there's an investment account.
Okay.
Usually principal on perpetual care
Mhm.
gets invested, and you can't touch the principal. You can only spend whatever it grows.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the
And
good
so
news is right
over
now,
time, they have grown to 24 grand. The investment account has both an investment in stocks and bonds, if you will, and a cash side of the investment. And when the cash side needs to be drawn upon, there's another money market account that's for operations that they move the money between. And I believe right now there is enough cash in the two cash accounts that could cover the 23,000. But then when it comes time to mow in May or June, they won't have the cash. And who's going to pay that bill? General fund. It'll be a cemetery fund expense, but they'll be right back in a position where they owe us money again.
Right, and that's what took me a minute to get through my fiscal, I guess, on this one topic, because it's $23,000. Like for, all the deep dives we've gone through, I've been like, this is a value amount, like this is high, but then when you realize that it's just value, it's not necessarily cash. And the fact that this historic report shows that since 2001, approximately within $2,000 for 25 years, it has been the same value. It's either transferring us, or we either get this value, but then we have to pay them, or we just forgive it and it go away. The history, it took me a minute, but you could also go back on the recording and see, we asked this question like 2 more times. But I feel good moving forward and recommending to the council with forgiving this and resetting and I don't know if I need a vote, if anybody opposes.
I think it'd be good for everybody to weigh in so that we know.
Yeah. Yay or nay from everybody in the financial task force.
I'm good with forgiving this because you can't squeeze water from a stone, blood from a stone, per se. But at the if there is, I just want to make sure, how do we make sure we don't forget about this? That they're, how it's getting paid, how things are getting paid for. That's just I want to make sure we don't forget it. Do we keep it on the books with like a $1 or something like that in case we need to keep it on our radar for some reason?
So it is part of every month presented financials include the interfund balances.
Okay.
And this is the account that is the interfund balance that shows minus 23,000 in the East Side Cemetery as part of the due to from interactions. And it's a value that indicates it owes some other fund money. And the only other fund that really does pay bills is that general fund.
Okay.
From a cash standpoint. So what might be an alternative to leave them enough money to mow the grass for a year or two and split it. Forgive half and have them give you cash for half. So what comes back in is equal to what we give them. Happy medium.
Sorry, you lost me, Chip. How does that work?
And then if it's 23, let's say they turn over 12 grand to us and we forgive the balance.
Yes, but we're still going to have to cover a $12,000 deficit in mowing if we do that.
No, because they have 24 grand in cash. We take half their cash and we forgive half of the debt.
Are they,
But the cost of mowing is $24,000 a year.
No, it's about 7.
does that mess things
Oh,
up in
that's
like
what I
a
was
year
not
or two
understanding.
though?
Right.
Does that mess anything up for like in the next 5 years? You know what I mean? Like, are they still gonna be bringing in enough to, or does that just mean that we end up forgiving the other half in like 3 years?
I think that's what we're proposing.
It should set it to 0. If we split it, we set it to 0. If we forgive it all, then you just monitor, did we end up paying for something?
I think my brain still can't figure out.
The
I don't
accounting of it.
I don't understand. Do we maintain any other cemeteries in the city of Newport? I'm just
No.
so confused by, was this like the result of a trust or some sort of, like, what is the investment account? Who's they? Who's a contact person with the cemetery? Like,
Oh,
how did,
That's an easy question, Susie. We have a cemetery commission that is
Okay.
appointed by council every year. And right now it's got Dennis Chanette, Paul Manette, and
Gene.
Jean. What's Jean's last name?
Starts with a C. It says a con, but I can't remember.
Yeah. So, and they are, they are appointed by council.
okay.
Joke. And,
And
okay.
and I hate to even do this because we're so tight on time, but you talk about investment funds. Are there literally investments out there that total this, or, I mean,
Yes, the balance sheet actually has an investment account at the top of it.
But
okay.
we don't control it. So this
but
came.
we don't control it, right? Right.
Yes. Somehow,
It's got the city's federal ID on it,
yes.
Okay.
but it's under the control of the cemetery commissioners.
Is there, I hate to say this, but my mind says, why are we paying $7,000 a year to mow that cemetery? Can we not figure out a way to do it cheaper?
No, that answer has been asked and answered. It takes a 2 full day project for a couple of guys to do it because it's so big and it demands so much fine work around the cemetery headstones. And
Okay.
I am confident that this is a legitimate cost and that it would cost the city just as much to do it ourselves as it does to do it through the contract.
Want to
Can I
hire my kids this summer?
What did you say?
I'm gonna hire my kids for $5,000 this summer.
Okay, are there any Boy Scout troops that are looking for their Eagle project?
Houses
Good ones.
But I'm not convinced the cemetery headstones would be in good shape if your kid did it for the summer. Right? I mean, there is some professionalism involved in trying to do this kind of mowing.
Yes, there absolutely is.
$24,000 worth of AstroTurf.
What's the rush in getting rid of this as it is? It's been there for 20 years. What's the rush in forgiving it now?
Definitely to clean the books.
Yeah, it's part of the broader project of trying to be honest about where we stand. So, I don't see why punting entirely makes sense. If y'all want to consider Chip's half measure and try that for 2 years or something like that, I suppose we could do that. But I haven't seen any fluctuation in it as I look at the books for 20 years, 25 years, and I don't know how, it's going to fluctuate differently over the next 2 or 3. So
Can I, before we do anything, have we put it out for a competitive bid? Like every 2 weeks from whatever date to whatever date, someone's going to come in and mow the grass or mow that. I don't know what the thing is, but there might
I believe it's
out there that wants
done by competitive bid. I think it's done by competitive bid, and the oversight is the cemetery commissioners.
that's right. So I want to be careful not to micromanage that question. The council has responsibility to set the commissioners, and if we're unhappy with the leadership that the commissioners are providing, that's a different question.
Right.
And this debt, in this instance, if we were seeing a deficit that was growing every year, then I would say, okay, now we've got a real question about the leadership around financial matters. But that's not what's happening here.
Right.
So the debt is a result of the failure to pay their bill every year?
No, that's what I'm saying. The debt is 25 years old. No one knows where it came from, Susan.
And it's just been carried over and carried over and carried
That's
over
right.
and nobody's done anything about it.
Right.
Right.
And if it was a private business, we would have written it off years ago.
But they have an investment account and they have the assets, so I don't understand why they didn't pay the bill.
So they have restricted assets. And then they have unrestricted assets. The
Right.
restricted are perpetual care funds that have been collected through the years
Okay,
that you can't touch the principal on, you can only spend the earnings. And the earnings are meant to be spent on perpetual care of a specific gravesite, which is a bunch of crap. You never do that. You actually maintain the whole thing. My thinking is probably back in the 90s, there was a major project taking down trees. And the bill got paid. And the cemetery commission at that time didn't have the money. Because taking down trees now, those trees are going to grow again, or even different ones. And it's going to be a major undertaking, and the cemetery commissioners will not have cash to be able to do that. And so that might be a cause that led to the 22,000 25 years ago. And that, you go in there now, I'm working with another community, they need trees taken down around their water and wastewater plants. That was scheduled to be done 5 years ago. Well, the cost 5 years ago is half of what the cost is to do that today. So the cemetery is going to be in a position at some point where it's going to need some major maintenance, and it's not going to have the money to do it. So if we forgive, they will maintain 20 grand or so. As long as they're gaining 5 and spending 7, they'll have resources to continue to mow. But when the day comes that they've got to do a major project up there, that is where they need cash. And that perpetual care is not a resource they're allowed to spend.
And we should expect at that day that the way they're going to answer that challenge is by coming to the city and saying, can the city help us to do this? Because it's a city obligation. So forgiving this $23,000, Chip's right, does not forgive the long-term obligation that the city's going to carry for maintaining the property.
okay. Makes sense.
So now do you want to finish answering the question? Do we write it off, or do we ask for the money, or do we ask for half?
Busy with either writing off or half and half. I, especially following the conversations we might be having with department heads around where can we cut. This could be one where it's something in our control. But Lori and Susie, I think I got Hal's take, but Hal, you pulled your answer.
I'm going to be really, really honest and say I'm going to recuse myself from answering that question because I am so unqualified to understand. That's all I can really say. I just.
Susie, do you have strong feelings one or another? Would you cast your ballot, if you would?
So we've just been kicking this debt down the road and done nothing for 20 years about it.
Correct.
And it keeps appearing. So haven't we inherently forgiven it at this point? I'm almost inclined, I'm a very fiscal conservative. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. And but I'm almost inclined to just say, what's the point of, if we're going to need to spend money to take down trees or to do other things, it's silly, this thing has been lying around for 20 years. So I would say just forgive the whole thing and move on with our lives. But
Can I ask, a very basic question? When can a cemetery become not a cemetery? And are there any people, relatives living who have anybody in that cemetery buried there?
The obvious answer has got to be a yes.
Pardon?
There are relatives of people who are buried there somewhere. Absolutely. I assume it's not a two-grade cemetery and it's not the Duttons. Okay, so
I think that question would be good for the cemetery commission. I kind of want to focus on the financial aspect, especially looking at the clock and I know folks have to get to work. How are you feel good with forgive him? Not
Yeah,
forgive.
I'm fine with it. All I can think of is Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack, where he says golf courses and cemeteries are the worst use of real estate.
So if I could just add
Your answer. We're not to those accounts.
if I could just add a caveat, I think it is the right thing to do to admit the reality on the balance sheet.
Yes.
I think it's also smart. It would be smart for us to recommend that the council invite the cemetery commission to come and meet with us on a regular basis to talk about the long-term prospects for how we're going to answer these questions going forward. Because Ann's not wrong. You know, cemetery politics in the life of the church are it's the third rail of church work. Like these become really problematic for any church that owns a cemetery too. And we have to find some way to deal with the fact that, you know, there are going to be headstone, repairs and etchings and all kinds of things that have to be done in the future. So I think if we went and said, let's forgive it and let's ask the commission to come and sit with us on a regular basis, that could really be smart.
And maybe the commission can reach out to the descendants of the residents of the cemetery and start the Friends of Eastside Cemetery Foundation, where they can all do private donations. And
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And who owns the land? Does the city own the land?
At this point, the city does, though I would have to be told for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking,
It's a city obligation.
yeah, I mean, who owns the land? Because the trees sit on the land and but I love the idea of the cemetery commission reaching out to the descendants. You know, I would likely think that there might actually be some information in the Newport Baptist Church archives somewhere of something. Dave Listener might have a clue. I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm finding that right now because I can multitask. Looking at the clock, I do want to start talking about this May meeting.
Have we set the date?
We haven't set the date. I was thinking maybe we set the date today and just put it in stone, and then
Please.
I think we need to meet next week. I know this bi-weekly meeting thing's been kind of nice, but we have some timely things that need our attention. So look, can everybody pull up work calendars, not just me as my council calendar?
And did we decide if we're going to do it during the week or in an evening during the week, or are we going to do it on a Saturday again?
Good question. What do folks think? I kind of am partial to a weeknight evening and try that out. But if we're thinking this is going to be a longer conversation, like, I don't know, time length, that's kind of like if it's 3 hours, but if it's more like a 2.5 hour where we also have I think that would be a really nice evening meeting, and that way we're not interfering with anybody's religious activities on the weekend. So
Yeah, I was going to say a Saturday evening or a Sunday afternoon.
oh, that's the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying weekday.
Oh, you're saying a weekday.
a weekday. I'm sorry. I was saying weekday. If
I'm
it's
sorry,
like
I
a
missed your point.
if it's a 3 hour, 4 hour thing, it's going to be on the weekend. That's because I don't
Okay.
expect folks. But if it's going to be a shorter, more condensed, not condensed, but like if we're able to get to the meat of it while having maybe some dinner, we could do it on a weekday evening. Sorry, I do need to make sure I'm using the right
Do you
word.
want to trade out, like just use a regular council meeting, move the council somewhere else and make a much bigger deal of it, like on the second meeting in May or something like that?
I like that. Because that would also
The 18th.
That would be the 18th of May if we did it that way.
Yeah. I'm not going to hold up anything because that May is like the worst month because I'm going and I have my son, the 17th is my son's graduation from college. So ain't going to happen for me. So I'm going to be gone and moving.
Good question. It's graduation season.
Yeah.
What if we did first meeting of May, Is that,
And I will be traveling for work the first week of May. So I'm gone like pretty much half of May is what it boils down to.
Mhm.
and I know that's soon.
It feels fast.
Definitely.
Early June.
Early June. First one of June, the first.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't want to make it about me. So it's what's more appropriate.
We're saying you're not the only one. It's graduation season.
Yeah, that was my other follow-up question is like with picking this date, are we shooting ourselves in the foot because of family, like very common family busy time?
Well, June 1st is the first council meeting in June. Not completely impossible.
It's kind of a nice match to the first week of January, like a
Yeah.
6 months in.
And of course, then the next 2 weekends are like high school graduations, or next 3 weekends are like high school graduations. So we've got to catch them in between the college and the high schools. And I recognize too that there's a lot of activities that happen. We might contact the high school and find out, what
May
what their
22nd.
end of school schedules are for June, if we're going to do a weeknight.
May 22nd is the start of NCS graduation week.
Which one?
May 22nd. I just looked it up online.
Are we muted? Can they hear us? We're not muted.
North Country graduation in May?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm looking at the wrong North Country High School.
Yeah, that's somebody out west, baby.
New York.
All right. Still west of us.
No problem.
Way out.
I mean, during the week, around this graduation time isn't the worst because we know families will be in town. Like we know people are here. They're not, I worry about the after graduation time because that's I'll take off for vacation. But we'll still also have a lot of people that are snowbirds and just around because it's not necessarily family, the summer vacation time yet. So I'm feeling good about either the 1st, and we could also do the 8th. Like if this is as important as I think it is, it wouldn't necessarily have to take over a council meeting. It could be a between. So maybe tentatively do look at the 1st and the 8th of June.
I like that.
And then sit on that for a week. And then next Wednesday, we'll really put a pin in it and then start the whole marketing advertisement conversation.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
So there is nothing on the North Country Supervisory Union calendar for June the 1st. There are school board meetings on the 8th. And I can certainly, probably call the high school and find out if they have their graduation stuff. I don't think their graduation is probably till the 13th or 20th, but anyway.
It would be great not to be on a night when the school board is meeting for some reason. So
Yep.
Where are we gonna have the meeting?
I don't know. Let's put that off till another time.
Yeah.
I think it
That is
depends
the
in part
next
on how we
question.
how we want the design to work. It won't be in the council room. It would be in a larger space somewhere.
At the tasting center in the big room in the middle.
Yeah.
That's a crazy idea.
The gym, the gateway, the high school.
And again,
We've got-
All right. All right. So tentative timing on, because I'm thinking the next task force.
Good question.
1 second. I want to make sure everybody can hear me online.
Really?
the first-
Yeah, but it's not that simple.
Hey, Pam and Ann, with the audio quality and being online, if you guys can mute or wait till I have to sign conversations. I'm just trying to wrap up real quick. So the next meeting is going to be, I think, tentative and depending on when we get back batch elder.
Yeah.
And that maybe be the first half of the meeting, and the second half of the meeting will be to again continue this conversation around planning for this event. So I'll keep you guys posted, but hopefully Wednesday morning And then I'll get an agenda out. So, all right. Thank you. And appreciate everybody taking their Wednesday, and I'll see you next one.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.